My name is Margaret Wilson, I am 78 years old, and I live in Dallas, Texas. I never thought that my life at this old age would be filled with such darkness, such pain, and such betrayal from the very people I gave birth to. But on one stormy night, inside my own house, something happened to me that I can never forget. It started in the bathroom. My 5 sons cornered me. Their hands were rough, their voices cruel, and I felt my whole body shake with fear. I screamed, begged, and cried, but they laughed at me as though I wasn't their mother. I couldn't understand how the children I raised could turn into monsters before my very eyes. And then in the middle of that nightmare, the door burst open. My old father stepped in, his cane shaking in his hand. His face was red with rage as he shouted, "Stop! It's Grandpa's turn." The room froze. My heart nearly stopped beating. What my father said next, and what happened after, will leave you in complete shock. I need to take you back to how all of this began, because sometimes evil doesn't just appear in a single night. It grows slowly, like a hidden fire under the floor, waiting for the right moment to destroy everything. When I was younger, I thought I had the perfect life. I married my husband, Richard Wilson, when I was only 20 years old. He was strong, handsome, and kind to me in the beginning. We built our home in Dallas, Texas, and I gave birth to 5 beautiful sons: Michael, James, Robert, William, and Thomas. For many years, I believed I was blessed. My boys filled the house with noise and laughter. They ran through the yard, chasing each other, falling, fighting, but always ending in hugs. I worked hard to raise them with love, discipline, and faith. Every night I prayed over them, asking God to protect them and guide them. But life has a way of changing people. The first sign came from my husband. Richard started drinking when he lost his job at the factory. The man I once loved turned bitter and angry. His words became knives, his hands became fists. Many nights, I would cover my bruises with long sleeves so that my neighbors wouldn't ask questions. Still I stayed. I told myself I had to endure it for the sake of my sons. I thought, if I can just be strong, they will grow up to be better men. But sometimes, children do not become what you pray for. Sometimes, they become what they see. As the years passed, my boys grew colder. They learned how to curse, how to mock, and how to treat me with the same disrespect their father showed me. I tried to hold on to the hope that deep inside, they still loved me. But one by one, each of them began to scare me. Michael, the eldest, was the first to raise his voice at me. He was only 16 when he pushed me during an argument over money. I remember falling to the ground and staring at him, tears in my eyes, whispering, "You are my son." But he only walked away without saying a word. James followed next. He began sneaking into the house late at night, drunk, slamming doors, cursing at me when I asked him questions. Robert became a liar and a thief, stealing from my purse and blaming it on strangers. William and Thomas, the youngest, copied their older brothers, until the entire house felt like a battlefield. And all the while, my father, an old, bitter man who had moved in with us after my mother died, watched everything in silence. He was a strict man, someone I feared since I was a child. He had never been gentle with me. He never comforted me. He only barked orders, reminding me that as his daughter, I owed him obedience even at my age. I felt trapped. My husband was cruel, my father was unkind, and my sons were growing into men with no respect for me. Still I prayed. I begged God to turn their hearts back to love. I hoped that maybe one day, they would realize how much I had sacrificed for them. But instead, things grew darker. One winter night, Richard came home drunk and angry. He accused me of being the reason for his failure. He shouted so loud the neighbors called the police. That night he hit me harder than ever before, and I thought I would die. But my 5 sons stood there watching, not one of them lifting a finger to help me. In fact, they laughed. They laughed at their own mother's pain. I should have left then. I should have run. But where could I go at my age? And who would take me in? So I stayed. But staying only fed the monster growing inside my house. As my sons became adults, their cruelty grew with them. They didn't just shout or push me. They began to enjoy humiliating me. Sometimes they would lock me in the room for hours. Sometimes they would take away my food and laugh at me when my stomach growled. And sometimes they would corner me, their faces close to mine, whispering words no mother should ever hear from her own children. And then came that night in the bathroom. I had gone in just to wash my face and rest. My body was weak, my spirit even weaker. But suddenly the door slammed open. All 5 of my sons walked in, their eyes full of something I cannot even describe. They surrounded me, their shadows pressing against the walls. My heart began to race. "Please," I begged. "Don't do this. I am your mother." But they didn't listen. They began to push me, mock me, and force me into the corner.
I cried, I screamed, I pleaded.
But the more I cried, the more they seemed to enjoy it. And just when I thought it couldn't get any worse, the door opened again. My father stood there, his face twisted in anger. For one second I thought he would save me. I thought he would finally defend me as a father should. But instead he shouted, "Stop! It's Grandpa's turn." The words cut through me like a knife. My own father, the man who gave me life, the one I thought, even in his coldness, would never cross a certain line. My knees buckled. My sons looked at him with shock, and then something even more terrifying happened. When my father's voice filled that bathroom, I thought the world had collapsed. My own father, at his old age, frail but still sharp in mind, stood in the doorway and told my 5 sons to stop because it was his turn. I froze. My body shook as though the ground under me had split open. For a moment silence covered the room. My sons turned to look at him, their faces a mixture of confusion and dark amusement. "Grandpa's turn," Michael, the eldest, muttered, his lips twisting into a smile. "You serious, old man?" James laughed loudly, his voice echoing against the tiles. "Looks like the old man wants a piece too." Their laughter filled the air, and my heart shattered into 1,000 pieces. I wanted to scream, to run, to fight, but my legs wouldn't move. My chest felt heavy, as if someone had tied a rope around my lungs. And then my father stepped inside, shutting the door behind him. "Move aside," he barked, his voice carrying the same authority that had made me tremble as a little girl. "She's my daughter, and you will wait until I'm finished." The words pierced me like hot knives. My stomach turned, my skin crawled, and I couldn't even cry anymore. My tears dried up in shock. But my sons didn't argue. They actually stepped back, as though they respected him more than they respected me, their own mother. I saw their eyes, empty of love, filled only with wickedness. And in that moment I realized, my family had turned into a pack of wolves, and I was the prey. I pressed myself against the cold tiles, whispering in my mind, "God, if you are there, please don't let this happen." But before the unthinkable could occur, a sudden crash from outside interrupted the moment. The sound of glass shattering. Someone had broken the window in the living room. Everyone turned their heads. My father's face hardened. "Stay here," he snapped at my sons. The boys hesitated, then rushed out of the bathroom with him. I collapsed to the floor, my body trembling uncontrollably, gasping for air like a drowning woman. For the first time in years I felt a flicker of hope. Maybe, just maybe, someone had come to save me. I crawled to the door and peeked out. The house was in chaos. My sons were running toward the living room, and my father followed close behind. I could hear angry voices shouting, furniture falling. Then I heard a familiar sound, the voice of my neighbor, Mrs. Jenkins. "Margaret! Where are you? Margaret!" She had heard my screams. She had come. My heart pounded. I wanted to run to her, but my legs were too weak. I forced myself to stand, leaning against the wall, and slowly shuffled down the hallway. When I reached the living room, the sight before me made my blood run cold. Mrs. Jenkins was standing in the middle of the room, holding a broomstick like a weapon. She was shaking, but her eyes were fierce. My 5 sons circled her, laughing and mocking, while my father barked orders. "Get her out of here," he shouted. "She doesn't belong." Mrs. Jenkins swung the broom, nearly hitting James. "Don't you dare touch her again. I'm calling the police." The boys hesitated, unsure whether to attack her or not. And in that small pause, Mrs. Jenkins turned to me. "Margaret, come," she shouted. I ran, or rather stumbled, into her arms. She held me tightly, shielding me with her small frame. "It's okay. You're safe now," she whispered, though I could hear the fear in her own voice. But we weren't safe. Not yet. My father's face darkened, his eyes filled with a rage I had never seen before. "You think the police will save her?" he growled. "This is family business. No one can touch us." And then Robert lunged forward, grabbing the phone from Mrs. Jenkins' hand and smashing it against the floor. The only way to call for help was gone. The room filled with chaos. My sons pushed, shoved, and shouted. Mrs. Jenkins fought back, swinging her broom wildly, while I clung to her, my body trembling like a leaf in the wind. Finally, Michael grabbed my arm and yanked me away. "You're not going anywhere, Mother," he sneered. "You belong to us." I screamed. Mrs. Jenkins tried to pull me back, but James struck her across the face. She fell hard, her head hitting the edge of the table. Blood trickled down her forehead. "No," I cried, falling to my knees beside her. Her eyes fluttered open, and she whispered weakly, "Run, Margaret, run." But where could I run? My house was surrounded by my own blood, my sons, my father. I felt like I was drowning in a nightmare that had no end. That night marked the beginning of a darker chapter in my life. After dragging me back into the hallway, my father and sons locked Mrs. Jenkins in the storage room. I could hear her banging on the door, crying for help. But they ignored her. And then they turned back to me. "Now," my father said coldly, "where were we?" I felt my soul leave my body. My vision blurred. I wanted to die right there. But death did not come. Instead, they pulled me back into the bathroom. The same room that now felt like a cage. The same room where my dignity was stripped away piece by piece. I won't describe the horror in detail. Not because I can't, but because words can never capture the full weight of what it feels like to be broken by the very people you gave life to. My body became weak, my heart became numb, and my mind began to split in two. One part of me endured the pain, while the other drifted far away, clinging to any memory of happiness I once had. When it was finally over, I lay on the floor, too weak to move. My sons laughed as they left the room one by one, as though what they had done was nothing but a game. My father lingered the longest, his cane tapping the tiles. He bent down close to me and whispered in my ear, "You are nothing, Margaret. Nothing but a woman who failed." And then he left. I lay there all night, bleeding, broken, shivering from the cold tiles beneath me. When morning came, I heard footsteps approaching again. My heart sank, thinking it was them returning. But when the door creaked open, it wasn't my sons or my father. It was Mrs. Jenkins. Her face was bruised, her head bandaged with a torn piece of cloth. Somehow, she had managed to escape the storage room. "Margaret," she whispered, tears in her eyes. "We have to leave. Now." She pulled me up with all the strength she had, wrapping a blanket around my shoulders. My legs barely carried me, but she half dragged, half supported me down the hallway. We reached the back door. The cold morning air hit my face, and for the first time in years, I felt a small taste of freedom. But just as we were about to step outside, Michael's voice thundered behind us. "Where do you think you're going?" I froze. My whole body turned to stone. "Mrs. Jenkins clutched my hand tightly, her eyes wide with fear. And when I turned, I saw all 5 of my sons and my father, standing there, blocking the way out. Their faces were twisted with fury. "We told you," my father growled, slamming his cane against the floor. "You're not leaving this house alive." I stood frozen at the doorway, the cold morning air brushing against my face like freedom just within reach. Yet the shadows of my father and 5 sons blocked the only way out. Their eyes glowed with anger, their lips twisted into cruel smiles. "Close the door," my father growled, slamming his cane on the wooden floor. "Nobody leaves this house until I say so." Michael, the eldest, stepped forward and shoved the door shut with a loud bang that echoed through the whole house. My heart sank. My chest tightened. Mrs. Jenkins gripped my arm so tightly that her nails dug into my skin, but I didn't pull away. Her touch was the only reminder that I wasn't alone. "Please," Mrs. Jenkins begged, her voice trembling but still brave. "She's your mother. How can you treat her this way? She gave you life. She fed you. She raised you." Her words only made them laugh. James threw his head back, laughing so loudly it sent chills down my spine. "Fed us? Raised us," he mocked. "She's nothing but a weak old woman. She doesn't control us. We control her." Robert smirked. his eyes narrowing at Mrs. Jenkins. "And you old hag, you should have stayed out of this. Now you're going to pay." I couldn't breathe. My throat felt tight as if invisible hands were squeezing it shut. "Run, Margaret," Mrs. Jenkins whispered suddenly, pushing me toward the door. "Run." But before I could move, William grabbed me by the hair and yanked me back. I screamed as pain shot through my scalp. "You're not going anywhere, Mother," he hissed in my ear. "You belong to us." Mrs. Jenkins picked up a heavy vase from the table and smashed it across William's back. He stumbled, releasing me for a moment. "Go," she shouted. But I couldn't. My legs betrayed me. My body was too weak, too tired. Instead, I stumbled into the corner, clutching my chest as tears poured down my face. My father raised his cane high and brought it down on Mrs. Jenkins' back. The sound of wood striking flesh made me flinch. She cried out but didn't fall. She swung the broken vase again, this time at Robert, cutting his cheek. Blood poured down, and his smile turned into a snarl. "You'll regret that," Robert screamed, lunging at her. The room turned into chaos. Furniture toppled over, glass shattered, and the air filled with curses and screams. I covered my ears, rocking back and forth, praying silently for God to end this nightmare. And then, like a miracle, there was another sound. A knock on the front door. Everything stopped. My sons froze. My father lowered his cane. Mrs. Jenkins gasped for air, sweat dripping down her face. The knock came again, louder this time. "Police! Open up." My heart leapt. Mrs. Jenkins must have managed to call them before her phone was taken away. Hope surged inside me like a flame flickering in the darkness. Michael's eyes widened in panic. "What do we do?" "Shut up," my father snapped. His face twisted in rage as he turned toward me. "Not a word. If you say anything, Margaret, you'll regret it." The knock came again. "Police. We've had a report of disturbance. Open the door immediately." Mrs. Jenkins looked at me with pleading eyes, silently begging me to speak, to shout, to cry for help. But fear tied my tongue. Robert quickly wiped the blood from his face and whispered, "We'll just tell them nothing happened. That old woman's crazy. They'll believe us." My father nodded and motioned for Michael to open the door. The door creaked open, and two uniformed officers stepped inside. Their eyes scanned the room, the broken vase, the overturned chairs, the bruises on Mrs. Jenkins' face, and me trembling in the corner. "Everything all right here?" one officer asked, his voice firm. My father forced a smile, leaning heavily on his cane. "Yes, officers. Just a little family argument. Nothing to worry about. This woman," he pointed at Mrs. Jenkins, "likes to exaggerate things." Mrs. Jenkins shouted, "No, that's a lie. They've been hurting her." She pointed at me, her hands shaking. "Look at her. Look at Margaret." The officers turned to me. My lips quivered, my body trembling. This was my chance. My only chance to tell the truth. One officer knelt in front of me. "Ma'am, are you okay? Did someone hurt you?" I opened my mouth but nothing came out. The fear of what my father and sons would do if I spoke paralyzed me. I looked at the officers, then at my family, then back at the officers. My voice cracked as I whispered, I'm fine." Mrs. Jenkins gasped.
Margaret, no.
The officers exchanged glances. "Are you sure, ma'am? Because she seems very concerned about you." I nodded quickly, tears streaming down my face.
I'm fine.
My father smiled triumphantly. "You see? Just a misunderstanding." The officers sighed. "All right. But we'll be keeping an eye on this house. If we get another call, we'll be back." They turned and walked out, leaving the door open behind them. The moment they left, silence filled the room. Then slowly Michael shut the door. The lock clicked like the sound of a coffin closing. And then the storm hit. James slapped me so hard I fell to the ground. "You almost ruined everything," he shouted. Robert kicked the table over. "If you ever open your mouth again, we'll make sure you never speak again." Mrs. Jenkins rushed to my side, shielding me with her body. "Leave her alone. You monsters." My father's face was darker than I had ever seen. He pointed his cane at Mrs. Jenkins. "Take her to the basement. She's caused enough trouble." Before I could react, William and Thomas grabbed Mrs. Jenkins by the arms. She fought, screamed, kicked, but they were too strong. They dragged her toward the basement door. No. I cried, crawling after them. Please don't hurt her. But they ignored me. The basement door creaked open, and they shoved her inside. Her scream echoed as the door slammed shut and the lock clicked. I pressed my face against the floor, sobbing uncontrollably. My only friend, the only person who tried to save me, now locked away in darkness. My father loomed over me, his shadow covering my trembling body. You should have spoken, he hissed. You should have told the police. But now it's too late. And then he raised his cane high above his head. I screamed as it came down. The cane crashed down across my back with a sickening crack. Pain shot through my whole body, white hot and sharp, making me scream until my voice cracked. I curled into a ball on the floor, trembling, as my father's shadow loomed over me like a monster that refused to go away. You worthless woman, he growled, his voice low and poisonous. You had the chance to be free. You had the chance to open your mouth. But no, you stayed weak. And now you'll suffer. I gasped for air, each breath feeling like knives in my lungs. My sons stood around us, watching with cold, empty eyes. None of them stepped forward to stop him. Not one. They just looked on, as though my pain was a show made for their amusement. When the cane rose again, I shut my eyes tight, bracing myself for the next blow. But it didn't come. Instead, Robert spoke. Father, stop. If you keep beating her now, she might die. Then what will we do with her? There was silence. My father lowered the cane slowly, his breathing heavy. His lips curled into a cruel smile. You're right. She doesn't deserve death yet. She deserves to feel every second of misery. He leaned down, his face so close to mine that I could smell the bitterness of his breath. And your friend, the loudmouth neighbor. You'll hear her scream soon enough. Then you'll know what happens to anyone who tries to save you. My blood ran cold. My heart pounded so hard I thought it might break through my ribs. Mrs. Jenkins was in the basement. Alone. I wanted to rise, to scream, to fight. But my body betrayed me. My legs were weak, my arms shook, and my voice was no stronger than a whisper. Please, I croaked. Please leave her alone. She's done nothing. Done nothing? My father snapped, standing tall again. She dared to interfere in my house. She dared to touch my grandsons. She dared to raise her hand against me. She'll pay with more than her blood. Michael chuckled darkly. Let's go deal with her now. It'll be fun. The others nodded, their eyes lighting up with the same cruel hunger I had come to know too well. No. I cried, crawling forward, clutching at their legs. Please, I beg you. James kicked me back hard. My body slammed against the wall, and I coughed violently, tasting blood in my mouth. Stay out of the way, Mother, he hissed. This isn't about you anymore. I lay there, helpless, as they moved toward the basement door. The sound of the lock clicking open echoed in the hallway. Mrs. Jenkins' muffled voice carried up from the darkness. Help! Somebody help! Her voice cracked with fear. Tears streamed down my face. I pressed my hands to the floor, trying to push myself up, but my body refused to obey. The basement door creaked open wider. The boys disappeared one by one into the darkness, my father leading them like a commander marching his army into war. And then silence. For a few seconds. The house was so quiet that all I could hear was the pounding of my heart. And then it began. Screams. Mrs. Jenkins' screams ripped through the house, echoing up the staircase, filling every corner. It was the sound of pure terror, of unbearable pain, of a woman fighting for her life. I covered my ears, sobbing, rocking back and forth. God, no. Please. Please, don't let them hurt her. But the screams continued. Louder. Sharper. Until they cut off suddenly, leaving only silence. I stopped breathing. The silence was worse than the screams. It meant something had happened, something final. I dragged myself across the floor, crawling toward the basement door. My arms shook, my vision blurred with tears, but I forced myself to move. The door was wide open now. Darkness spilled out like a living thing, cold and heavy. I reached the edge of the stairs and peered down. I couldn't see much, only shadows moving in the dim light. But then I saw it. Mrs. Jenkins, lying on the floor, motionless. Her white hair spread out like a halo, her body twisted unnaturally. No. I screamed, my voice raw. No, please. The shadows turned. My sons' faces appeared one by one, eyes glinting in the dark. My father stood behind them, his cane tapping against the wooden steps. She's done, he said simply. And you're next. My whole body went cold. My fingers gripped the stair railing so tight that my knuckles turned white. I scrambled backward, crawling on the floor like a wounded animal, but they followed me up slowly, step by step. Their eyes never left me. Panic surged through me. I glanced at the front door. It was my only chance. My legs wobbled as I tried to stand, but somehow, by sheer desperation, I managed to pull myself upright. I ran. The door was just a few feet away. My heart raced. My hands stretched forward, reaching for the lock. But before I could touch it, strong arms grabbed me from behind. Michael's voice hissed in my ear. You're not going anywhere, Mother. I screamed, thrashing, kicking, clawing, but his grip was like iron. He dragged me back into the living room, throwing me to the floor like a rag doll. My father and the others circled me again. This time, their faces weren't amused. They were furious, their patience gone. You should have learned by now, my father said coldly, lifting his cane once more. No one escapes this family. Not alive. The cane came down toward my face. And then boom. The front door burst open with a violent crash. A flood of light poured into the room. And standing there were 2 police officers and a tall man in a black suit. The officers raised their guns. Everyone stepped back. Hands where we can see them. The man in the suit stepped forward, his eyes locking on me. Margaret, he said firmly. We're here for you. You're safe now. I blinked, my mind spinning. Who was he? How did he know my name? And why did he look so familiar? The door stood wide open, light flooding into the dark living room. For the first time in years, I saw my sons and father look unsure. The police officers had their guns drawn, their voices sharp and commanding. Hands up. Now, one officer barked. My sons froze. Their faces twisted between fear and anger. My father's cane tapped against the floor, his jaw clenched tight. For a moment, nobody moved. Then my eyes landed on the man in the black suit. He was tall, broad-shouldered, his hair neatly combed back. His voice was deep, steady, almost too calm for the chaos that filled the room. Margaret, he repeated, looking directly at me. We've been watching this house for some time. Tonight it ends. I blinked through my tears. My chest rose and fell rapidly. Who are you? His lips curved into the smallest smile, though his eyes stayed serious. My name is Daniel Carter. I'm with the State Protection Unit. And, he paused, lowering his voice slightly, I'm also your grandson. The room spun. My heart skipped a beat. Grandson? I whispered, barely believing my ears. Michael scoffed loudly. Grandson? Don't listen to him, Mother. He's lying. But Daniel didn't look at Michael. He only kept his gaze locked on me. It's true. I'm the son of your daughter. The one they never told you about. My hands trembled. My mind went blank. A daughter? I gasped, my voice breaking. I never had a daughter. I only had 5 sons. Daniel's eyes softened, his words gentle but firm. You were made to believe that. But you did have a daughter. Years ago. When you were young. She was taken away from you. Hidden. Because your father didn't want anyone to know. He raised her in secret, far away from you. And I am her son. My heart thudded violently in my chest. I shook my head, my tears falling faster. No, that can't be true. I would have known. I would have remembered. My father's cane slammed against the ground with a deafening crack. Enough. He thundered, his eyes blazing. Don't believe his lies, Margaret. He's here to destroy us. He's a stranger. But deep inside something stirred. A memory. A faint whisper from the past I had long buried. The hospital bed. The cries of a baby. My young body weak and trembling. And then silence. The baby gone. My father's cold voice telling me it had been stillborn. Could it be? Could it really be true? I looked at Daniel again. My vision blurry with tears. My daughter? He nodded slowly. Yes. Her name was Elizabeth. She grew up hating the man who stole her from you. She died years ago, but before she passed, she told me everything. She made me promise that I would find you and protect you from him, from all of them. My knees buckled. The room felt like it was spinning out of control. My sons shifted nervously, glancing between me, Daniel, and the police officers who still had their guns raised. James snarled. This is a trick. He's lying to get inside our family. Don't listen, Mother. But for the first time I felt something I hadn't felt in years, hope. If Daniel was truly my grandson, then maybe I wasn't completely alone. Maybe not all my blood was poisoned. Margaret, Daniel said, his voice steady. Come with me. We'll take you away from this nightmare. Tonight can be the night you're finally free. I wanted to run into his arms. I wanted to believe every word. But then my father's voice sliced through the air like a blade. She's not going anywhere, he roared. And with shocking speed for his age, my father lunged forward, swinging his cane at one of the police officers. The officer dodged, but the sudden movement sent the whole room into chaos. Drop the weapon, one officer shouted. My sons charged at the officers. The room exploded into a violent struggle. Shouts, crashes, the sound of fists colliding with flesh. Get her out, Daniel shouted, rushing toward me. He grabbed my arm firmly, guiding me toward the door. But Michael blocked the way, his eyes burning with rage. She's not leaving with you, he spat, swinging his fist at Daniel. The punch landed hard against Daniel's jaw, but he didn't fall. He tightened his grip on me, shielding me with his body as he shoved Michael back. Run, Margaret, he yelled. But before we could reach the door, James tackled Daniel from behind. They both fell to the ground, rolling, fists flying. Daniel! I screamed, my voice breaking. The officers fought to control the other four, but my sons were wild, fueled by something dark and unholy. My father stood in the corner, his eyes wide, his cane tapping the floor as he watched his plan crumble. I stumbled toward the door, my body aching but driven by desperation. My hand touched the handle. Freedom so close I could taste it. And then Robert grabbed me from behind, yanking me backward. Not so fast, Mother, he hissed. I screamed, clawing at his arms, kicking wildly. Let me go. Let me go. The officers shouted, Daniel fought. Mrs. Jenkins' silence from the basement haunted me. The whole house was chaos, every sound blending into one terrible storm. And then bang! The sharp crack of a gunshot froze everyone in place. I gasped, my eyes wide, my ears ringing. Smoke curled in the air. Slowly I turned my head and saw Daniel on the floor, blood blooming across his shirt. No! I screamed, falling to my knees. Daniel! Daniel! His lips parted, his eyes locking on mine. His voice was faint, broken. Grandma! Don't give up, you're stronger than them. And then his eyes fluttered shut. My whole world shattered. But before I could even process the horror, my father's voice rang out, cruel and triumphant. Close the door. This ends tonight. The officers raised their guns again, shouting commands, but my sons tightened their grip on me. And in that instant I knew the nightmare was far from over. The knock on the door grew louder and louder, until it felt like the whole house was shaking. My heart jumped into my throat as I clutched the blanket around me. Who is it? I whispered, though I already had a strong feeling. The voice that followed made my blood run cold. Open this door, Elizabeth. It was my father's voice. You've been hiding too long. Stop pretending. Tonight is not over. I froze. My breath came in sharp gasps. My father had always been the root of this nightmare, the one who started everything and poisoned my sons' minds. Now he was at the door, angry, determined, and more dangerous than ever. My hands trembled as I tried to push a chair under the doorknob to hold it in place. But I knew it wouldn't be enough. My father was strong, and he was used to breaking down anything that stood in his way. Suddenly his fist slammed against the wood. Bam! 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 The sound echoed through the small room like thunder. I pressed my hands over my ears, tears spilling down my cheeks. I felt like a little girl again. Helpless, powerless, trapped in the grip of the very man who was supposed to protect me. Don't make me break it down, he roared. You belong to this family and you'll do as I say. Open it now. At that moment, something inside me cracked. I couldn't live like this anymore. I couldn't keep running, hiding, and waiting for the next round of abuse. I had to fight back. But how? With what? I scanned the small room desperately, my eyes landing on a heavy metal lamp sitting on the table by the bed. My pulse raced as I grabbed it and held it close, the cold metal trembling in my sweaty hands. It wasn't much, but it was all I had. The door shuttered again as my father kicked it hard. The chair scraped across the floor, nearly giving way. I knew I had seconds, maybe less, before he stormed in. God, give me strength, I whispered under my breath. And then it happened. The door cracked open with a loud splintering sound. My father's face appeared in the gap, twisted with rage. His eyes burned into mine, and he growled like a wild beast. I raised the lamp high above my head, ready to strike, but my arms shook violently. Could I really hit my own father? Could I really hurt the man who gave me life, even though he had spent years destroying it? Before I could decide, the door flew open completely, slamming against the wall. My father stormed in, his large frame filling the doorway. His hands reached for me, ready to drag me back into the nightmare. That's when I swung. The lamp came crashing down with a loud clang, hitting his shoulder instead of his head. He staggered back, cursing and shouting, but he didn't fall. His eyes grew darker, full of fury. You dare raise your hand against me, Elizabeth? He thundered. I stepped back, my body pressed against the wall, clutching the lamp like it was the only thing keeping me alive. Stay away from me, I screamed, though my voice cracked with fear. But he didn't stay away. He lunged forward, faster than I expected. His rough hands grabbed my wrist, twisting it painfully until the lamp clattered to the floor. I cried out in pain as he shoved me hard onto the bed. For a moment everything blurred. The smell of his sweat, the sound of his heavy breathing, the sight of his shadow looming over me. I thought this was it. I thought I was about to lose completely. But then, just as his hands pinned me down, another voice filled the room. Let her go. My heart skipped. I turned my head and saw someone standing at the door. My eyes widened in shock. It was one of my neighbors, Mr. Harris, an older man who had seen me crying outside the market many times but never asked questions. And behind him were two more men from the street, their eyes full of anger and determination. They must have heard the noise. They must have finally decided to step in. For the first time in years, I saw fear flash across my father's face. He released me slowly, his jaw tightening as he turned toward the men. This is family business, he growled. You don't belong here. But Mr. Harris didn't back down. He stepped into the room, his fists clenched. Family business or not, enough is enough. We've heard her cries. We've seen the bruises. Tonight it ends. My father looked from him to the other men, his chest heaving. For once, he wasn't the strongest man in the room. I sat up on the bed, shaking, tears streaming down my face. Hope flickered in my chest for the first time in what felt like forever. Could this really be happening? Could this nightmare finally be coming to an end? But before I could find out, my father let out a loud, guttural roar and charged straight at Mr. Harris. The two men collided in the middle of the room, fists flying, bodies crashing into furniture. The lamp fell over, sending sparks of light scattering. I screamed as the fight exploded before my eyes. The other two neighbors rushed in to help, grabbing my father and trying to pull him away. But he was strong, wild, like a cornered animal. He bit, kicked, and punched, his rage fueling him beyond reason. In the chaos, one of the men shouted at me, "Elizabeth, run. Get out now." But I couldn't move. My legs felt frozen, my heart pounding so hard it hurt. I couldn't leave them. I couldn't just escape and leave others to suffer his wrath. And then, everything turned upside down. My father broke free of their grip and reached under his coat. My eyes widened in terror as I saw the glint of metal. He pulled out a knife, the blade shining under the dim light. "Everyone stay back," he roared, swinging it wildly. The men stumbled away, their faces pale with shock. The room went deadly silent except for my father's heavy breathing. And then slowly his eyes turned back to me. The knife pointed straight at my chest. "Elizabeth," he said in a low, menacing voice. "If I can't control you, no one will." My scream tore through the night as he stepped closer, the knife catching the light. And that was when. When I woke up that morning, my whole body ached. My wrists were swollen from the ropes, my face was bruised, and my soul was broken. I thought maybe, just maybe, the night had been a nightmare, but the pain in my body reminded me it was all real. My 5 sons had done the unthinkable to me, and then my father had come in with that monstrous declaration. I lay still on the cold floor, too weak to cry anymore. But suddenly the door creaked open again. My heart raced. This time it wasn't my sons nor my father. It was my neighbor, Mrs. Collins. She was holding a basket of bread. "Martha," she whispered softly, stepping inside. "Your door was left ajar. I thought I'd bring you some food. Are you home?" My breath caught in my throat. This was my chance. My only chance. But fear paralyzed me. What if my father or my sons heard me call for help? They'd kill me before Mrs. Collins could do anything. Still, I couldn't waste it. I whispered, hoarse and broken, "Help me, please. Mrs. Collins froze. She dropped the basket, bread spilling across the floor. Her eyes widened when she saw me tied up, my clothes torn, my face bleeding. "Oh my Lord!" she gasped, rushing over to untie me. Her hands shook so badly she struggled with the knots. "What happened to you? Who did this?" Before I could answer, I heard footsteps, heavy, quick, and angry, approaching the bathroom. My heart almost stopped. It was my father. He had heard her voice. The door burst open and there he stood, his eyes blazing with fury. "What are you doing here, Collins?" he roared, grabbing her arm so hard she screamed. "Get out. This is family business." But Mrs. Collins was no weak woman. She pulled back, raising her voice. "This is abuse, Henry. I'm calling the police right now." In that moment, my father's face twisted into something pure evil. He let go of her, walked toward me, and raised his fist. "If you say a word to anyone," he growled at me, "you'll regret it more than you regret living." Mrs. Collins took one step back toward the door, her eyes darting from me to my father. And then she did something that made my heart skip. She shouted out loud enough for the whole street to hear. "Help! Somebody help! They're hurting Martha!" The sound of her voice rang through the walls, piercing the silence of the neighborhood. My father lunged at her, but she slipped out of the door before he could grab her again. My sons rushed into the hallway, panic spreading across their faces. "What did she see?" James hissed. "What if she tells the police?" "Shut up," my father barked. "Nobody will believe her. This is our family secret." But I knew deep inside, things were no longer the same. Mrs. Collins had seen enough. She had screamed for help. And now someone was bound to come. I thought I was saved. But that night, as I lay on the floor with my arms bleeding from the ropes, my father leaned close and whispered something in my ear that froze my blood. "She won't make it to the police, Martha," he said, his voice like poison. "We'll take care of her before she ruins everything." The words sank deep into me, and I realized the horror wasn't just mine anymore. It was about to spread to anyone who dared to help me. That was the moment I knew my nightmare wasn't ending. It was only beginning. That night I couldn't sleep. My body was weak, but my mind was racing with fear. Mrs. Collins had seen everything. She had screamed for help. But my father's words haunted me. She won't make it to the police. I lay there praying that someone would come before it was too late. Hours passed. My father and my sons whispered outside the bathroom door, plotting something I couldn't hear clearly. Every time I closed my eyes, I imagined Mrs. Collins lying somewhere hurt, or worse. My heart ached. She was my only hope, and if they silenced her, I was finished. Then just before dawn, I heard loud banging on the front door. Boom! 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 My heart leapt. "Police! Open up!" For a moment silence filled the house. My father froze, my sons exchanged frightened looks. "Stay quiet," my father hissed. "They'll go away." But the banging grew louder. "We know you're in there. Open the door or we'll break it down." I almost wept with relief. Mrs. Collins had done it. She had gone to the police. My father stormed into the bathroom, grabbed my face and hissed, "Say one word, Martha, and I'll kill you before they can save you." His hand tightened around my throat. My vision blurred. But then crash, the door flew off its hinges. Officers rushed in, guns drawn. "Step away from her," one shouted. My father dropped me instantly, raising his hands. My sons scattered like rats trying to flee. But the police were faster. They tackled them one by one, dragging them to the ground in handcuffs. I sat trembling as two officers rushed to untie me. "Ma'am, you're safe now," one said gently. But safe was the last thing I felt. I had lived with monsters for too long. Mrs. Collins came running inside, tears streaming down her face. "Martha! Oh, thank God you're alive." She held my hand tight, refusing to let go. I cried into her shoulder, finally releasing years of pain. The police dragged my father out last. His face was red with rage, his eyes burning into me. "This isn't over, Martha," he screamed. "Family is forever. You can't escape us." But this time I didn't tremble. For the first time in my life, I realized I wasn't powerless. I looked straight at him, my voice hoarse but steady. "No, Father. Family isn't forever when it's built on abuse. Today it ends." The neighbors stood outside, watching in shock as the police cars carried my father and my sons away. Whispers filled the air. People who had lived beside me for years, never knowing the horror that had gone on behind closed doors. In the weeks that followed, I stayed with Mrs. Collins while the police gathered evidence. Doctors treated my injuries. Lawyers listened to my testimony. For once, people believed me. My sons and father were charged for their crimes. The trial was long, but the truth came out. And when the guilty verdict was read, I felt chains I had carried for decades finally break. I was free. But freedom came with scars inside and out. I often asked myself how my own blood could betray me so deeply. I had given them life and they had tried to destroy mine. And that's when I understood the lesson that would stay with me forever. Evil doesn't always come from strangers. Sometimes it comes from the people you trust the most. And silence only feeds it. If you are suffering, you must speak out, no matter how afraid you are. Because there is always someone, like Mrs. Collins, who will listen and fight for you. Now at 78, I live quietly in Chicago. I tend to my garden, drink tea with Mrs. Collins, and watch the sun rise without fear. My scars remind me of the darkness I survived, but also of the strength I never knew I had. And whenever I hear laughter from children playing down the street, I smile, because I know they will grow up with a story that teaches them this truth. Love is not proven by blood. Love is proven by kindness, protection, and respect. That is the life lesson I leave behind.